know. I love my fatherland. Oh yeah. I want to know. Yes, I want to know. Which way Nigeria is heading to. Which way Nigeria. Which way Nigeria.
The birth of the new year 2012 is arguably one of the most unpleasant mornings of the Nigerian nation in the annals of recorded history. On that day, the more than 160 million citizens woke up to the shocking news that the federal government of President Goodluck Jonathan has withdrawn the contentious subsidy on petrol (PMS) in its totality. More so, this meant that 1 litre of petrol, which the citizens had bought 24 hours before at 65 naira a litre, was now to sell at between 141 and 150 naira per litre. This ominous news was not helped by the fact that the nation had barely recovered from the murderous and callous bombing spree of the renegade Boko Haram sect just 7 days before, on Christmas Day 2011. Boko Haram had murdered scores of persons, men, women and children, as well as destroyed properties worth millions of naira on what became known as Black Christmas. The civil society was almost in universal condemnation of government's position and demanded for an immediate reversal of the government policy. Labour, under the aegis of the Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) and the Trade Union Congress (TUC), called a nationwide strike on the 9th of January 2012. Mass protest and the near-total shutdown of government, business, commerce and even domestic activities became the order of the day. In several pockets, these peaceful protests were hijacked by undesirable elements who took undue advantage of the situation. On the other hand, millions of aggrieved Nigerians have taken to alternative modes of showing their discontent with massive use of new media, Facebook, Twitter, BlackBerry and YouTube. Fringe groups such as Occupy Nigeria, Take Back Nigeria, New Nigeria Forum have created online chat rooms with millions of postings daily. But what is subsidy? What are the issues germane to its purported removal? What are the consequences on the political, social and economic health, not only of government, but of the larger mass of Nigerian citizens? What, in truth, is the economic arithmetic of petroleum product exploration, processing and refining and distribution? In technical terms, what are the processes that straddle the petroleum product value chain, from upstream to midstream to its downstream sectors? What are the historical antecedents of the fuel subsidy policy and the state of government's oil infrastructure, such as refineries and pipelines? Oil was first discovered in Nigeria in 1906. Oil exploration began in 1937, a year after Shell Dachi was granted the sole right for hydrocarbon exploration in Nigeria in 1936. However, oil was discovered in commercial quantities in 1956 and production began in 1958 in Olobiri, a now near desolate pollution-raven community in present Bayelsa State. All the 4 refineries in Nigeria are owned by the federal government, and they were all constructed or installed between 1965 and 1989. In its advertised Shore program, the present government, in justifying the withdrawal of subsidy, also proposes to build 3 new refineries under a counterpart funding arrangement with the private sector in Bayelsa, Kogi and Lagos states, with a combined processing capacity of 400,000 barrels per day. However, Nigeria's refined petroleum product imbroglio can be readily traced to its inability or unwillingness to make its existing 4 refineries function. The 4 existing refineries are as follows. Port Harcourt Refinery 1, built in 1965. It is the smallest and the oldest of the refineries, with a capacity of 60,000 barrels per day. It was formerly owned and operated by Shell British Petroleum, but was nationalized by the first General Obasanjo administration. It is reportedly obsolete and has since been decommissioned. Port Harcourt Refinery 2, or the new Port Harcourt Refinery, completed in 1989 by General Babangida administration, is the nation's newest and largest refinery and conceived as an export refinery with a capacity of 150,000 barrels per day. In 1995, the LMA petrochemical plant was built adjacent to the refinery to facilitate the production of polypropylene and polyethylene. Today, Its output is a fraction of its installed capacity. However, it is still the most functional of the nation's refineries. The adjacent LMA petrochemical facility now lays dormant. It is on record that the last turnaround maintenance was last done at the Port Harcourt refinery in the year 2000. The turbines and the refineries power plants that are meant to be mandatorily overhauled every 3 years were last overhauled in 1993. The turbines have not been overhauled for some 17 years now. The Warri refinery was built in 1978 when Muhammadu Buhari was the petroleum minister under the Obasanjo military regime with an installed capacity of 125,000 barrels per day. The complex had an additional petrochemical processing capability added to it in 1986 for downstream petroleum products such as polypropylene and carbon black. However, due to neglect, frequent shutdowns, lack of maintenance and pipeline sabotage, the refinery often manages to output less than 30% of its installed capacity. The Warri refinery also has the capability to generate 125 megawatts of electricity if running at capacity. Hence, the energy needs of the refinery could be met with the excess energy produced in upwards of 70%, could supply the nation's power grid. In more recent years, however, most operations have ceased and the refinery is in various stages of disrepair. The Kaduna refinery, built in 1979 and located over 600 kilometers from its supply feed in Escravos, Delta State. It is designed to process both Nigerian Bonny Light and imported crude oil Arab Light, though with an installed capacity of 110,000 barrels per day. The sad story is that the Kaduna refinery has never performed at full capacity. The refinery also has an integrated base oil manufacturing plant, an asphalt plant, and a lab plant. Except in the first 10 years of its installation, the Kaduna refinery has been plagued by all manners of problems, including a frequent sabotage of the supply pipelines, technical breakdowns, poor maintenance and management. It witnessed major fire outbreaks on at least 2 occasions in 1997 and 2002. In its best operating years, between 1999 and 2002, the Kaduna refinery output was estimated to have been around 30 to 40% of capacity. In 2003, the pipeline from Escravos was sabotaged, vandalized and blown apart. The refinery is currently barely operational and is capable of being operated at less than 10% capacity. With a total installed capacity of 445,000 barrels per day, the nation's 4 refineries, if functional, would have been able to produce and supply 70,750,550 liters of refined petroleum products per day. 1 barrel equates 42 gallons, or 158.99 liters per barrel. In fact, with this figure, we would have no use for importation of refined petroleum products, and Nigeria could sell its excess refined products to neighboring countries. The prices of petroleum products in Nigeria have been a source of contention and controversy, and there is an urgent need to clarify the actual total cost by adding the cost of all components in retail supply of premium motor spirit PMS, also known as petrol or gasoline. The cost components are finding, developing, producing, refining, distributing and marketing. The amount of subsidy on the retail price is then determined by the difference between the actual cost and the retail price. The mode employed for this analysis is based on the American Petroleum Institute API method for calculating the actual total cost of gasoline in the U.S. It divides the retail cost into components such as cost of crude oil, the cost of refining and marketing, and the sum of all taxes. We shall apply an exchange rate regime of 160 naira to $1. This method is simple and accurate, but many even question why we should sell oil to Nigerians at the price it sells to external buyers, when oil is our God-given wealth. Exploration cost averages about 3 kobo per litre. Oil development cost includes capital cost of field facilities design, procurement, transportation, installation and commissioning. Cost of wells and pipelines to existing terminals are also included. This varies from about $2 to $7 per barrel, using an average of $5 per barrel. This equates 3 cents per litre or 4 naira 80 kobo per litre. Current 2010 production operation cost of major oil companies indicate a range of $1.5 to $4 per barrel. This includes all overhead cost. This is equivalent to 2 naira 45 kobo per litre. Thus, the actual crude oil production cost in Nigeria is approximately 7 naira 28 kobo per litre. Refining cost. Installed refinery capacity in Nigeria stands at 445,000 barrels per day. Refining cost data from these refineries are not readily provided by NNPC. Even when such data is available, they are unreliable. According to the former Nigerian Vice President in an interview granted This Day newspaper in August 2005, "We have never got correct statistics from NNPC. They will never be able to tell you the correct thing. We have that problem with NNPC." End of quote. To estimate refining cost, we can only rely on international industry data from similar refineries who use the contemporary refining technology known as the fluid catalytic cracking (FCC) process. This is the same process used by most Nigerian refineries. The American Petroleum Institute (API) estimates gross refining and distribution marketing costs and profits at $1 per gallon as at October 2005, using a 50-50 split as established by historical U.S. cost trend. It can be clearly concluded that refining costs and profit per gallon of refined petrol or gasoline is 50 cents per gallon. This value includes the profits of the refineries. However, actual refining cost is lower in Nigeria because labor costs are significantly cheaper and lower in Nigeria. 50 cents per gallon translates to $21 per barrel. We will capture refining cost as $21 per barrel. This is approximately 21 naira 13 kobo per litre. Marketing cost and distribution costs in Nigeria are established by government regulation. The distribution cost is a cost margin allowed for road tankers that transport petrol from the depot to the fuel stations, while the marketing cost is the cost margin allowed for oil marketing companies that operate fuel retail stations. As of December 2011, the PPPRA product pricing template puts the marketing cost and distribution cost in Nigeria at 15 naira 49 kobo per litre. The federal government, through the Petroleum Product Pricing and Regulatory Authority, had earmarked an additional 9 naira 15 kobo as profit margin per litre for local marketers. Thus, the aggregate and verifiable total cost is approximately 43 naira 93 kobo. This has been determined as the sum total of all relevant cost components from exploration, development, production operations, refining, distribution and marketing. This is done via best global practice. Added to this is the profit margin per litre of 9 naira 15 kobo, thus bringing pump price per litre to 53 naira 8 kobo. Therefore, we can conclude that the average cost of the petrol dispensed at retail fuel stations in Nigeria should be 53 naira 8 kobo. From the above, it is difficult to see where the subsidy resides. Empirically, it will not be erroneous to conclude that government makes a profit of 12 naira per litre on PMS, petrol, at the 2011 price of 65 naira per litre. This translates to a very comfortable 24% profit margin per litre. It supports the argument of those who are of the opinion that the claim of subsidies on petroleum products is not correct. On the other side of the argument are those who believe that there is a massive smuggling of petroleum products across our borders. The Nigerian government claims that Nigerians consume 34 million litres of petrol per day. Most experts, however, believe that between 20 million litres and 28 million litres per day is more realistic. It is also calculated that our neighbours like Ghana, Togo, Benin, Cameroon, Niger and Chad have a combined population of 85.5 million people. Thus, at our current calculations, these countries will consume an average of 18.35 million litres per day. If it is assumed that 50% of the petrol consumed in each of these countries come from Nigeria, this will equate an average of about 9.18 million litres per day. But is it possible for 9.18 million litres of petrol to be smuggled out of our borders every day and the government cannot do anything about it? The biggest fuel tankers in Nigeria have a capacity of about 36,000 litres. 254 trailer tankers will be needed to smuggle this amount of fuel out of Nigeria every day. It is unthinkable that over 250 huge tankers will pass through our borders illegally every day, and government cannot do anything about it. Professor Tam David West, a former petroleum minister in the defunct military administration of Major General Muhammadu Buhari, vehemently opines that there is nothing like oil subsidy.
Something doesn't exist. So you cannot remove what doesn't exist. I think
it does not even exist.
It doesn't exist. Nigeria oil is costliest. So every time they fail, they do something. First they said, when they said increase of oil price, when they said that's too hot, they said appropriate pricing of oil. Appropriate what? Now then they go for oil is the cheapest, so they're smuggling it. They lie.
In his position paper, which is widely available on the internet, Professor David West states unequivocally that during Buhari's time, we had 3 refineries. Whenever there was a shortage of oil, we embarked on offshore processing. If at a time the production of oil couldn't satisfy our needs, we selected oil companies like Shell and others that we would give crude oil to refine abroad, sell at foreign exchange rate and pay to our account. We got quantum of barrels of crude oil and gave to these companies. And after they might have refined it, let's say they got 1 million litres and we needed only 200 litres, they would give us the quantity we wanted and sell the remaining and give us foreign exchange. We only took our fuel back and never imported fuel.
Which way to go?
A careful comparative look at both the minimum wage and pump price of petrol in Nigeria as against the minimum wage and pump price in other OPEC countries make the government's argument a lot less compelling. For example, with a minimum wage of 95,639 naira, the pump price in Venezuela is a mere 3 naira 61 kobo. Kuwait minimum wage is 161,000 naira and the pump price is 34 naira 54 kobo. Iran minimum wage is 86,585 naira and the pump price is 102 naira 5 kobo. Algeria, with a minimum wage of 55,957 naira, has a pump price of 63 naira 55 kobo. Even war-torn Iraq, with a minimum wage at 25,813 naira, has a pump price of 59 naira 66 kobo. But Nigeria, with a yet-to-be-implemented minimum wage of 18,000 naira, has a pump price of 141 naira. In conclusion, it is apparent that the oil subsidy withdrawal drama is evidence that there is something endemically wrong with Nigeria and the broader question of nationhood. The equitable distribution of national wealth, government incompetence, ethnic and religious strife, endemic corruption, political gangsterism, and the clear nepotic disposition of an oligarchy who profit from exploiting the weaknesses of the Nigerian state. Many commentators on national development have contended that the oil subsidy impasse is nothing but a spin-off, a mere chip of the old and seemingly intractable problems of the Nigerian nation. They believe that Nigeria must confront the problems that eat away at the very fabric of the Nigerian nation. In a thought-provoking and incisive paper titled Politics, Democracy and Development in Nigeria, which was delivered at the 16th National Delegates Conference of the Academic Staff Union of Universities ASU, Arthur Aguncha Nwankwo, Chancellor of the Eastern Mandate Union, attempted a critical appraisal of the Nigerian problem. He opined that Nigeria is experiencing traumatic and major foundational crisis in terms of its politics, democracy and development. That Nigeria is perhaps the only country in the world where official deceit and lies have become an article of faith and the accepted norm for conducting the business of government. In Nigeria, one is first and foremost a member of his ethnic nationality before being a Nigerian. The concept of Nigeria exists only on the lips of Nigerians and certainly not in their hearts and minds.
Call so clear and strong, it's a call to build our nation, it's a call for everyone who is Nigerian, hear the sound so clear. It's the call for transformation, and the time for change is now.
The total budget for 2012 is 4.749 trillion naira. This budget is premised on oil price benchmark of $70 per barrel and at 2.45 million barrels per day. The 2012 budget had no provisions whatsoever for fuel subsidy. Thus, there will be zero deduction from federal revenues for fuel subsidy. The proposed 2012 budget deficit amounts to 2.77% of the GDP. For the purpose of analysis, the nominal gross domestic product for 2012 was estimated at 3.6 trillion naira by the National Bureau of Statistics. This means that at least 1 trillion naira of the budget will be borrowed, except there are extra revenues from extra budgetary sources. In the 2012 budget, government had earmarked 1.32 trillion naira as capital expenditure. Thus, if government funds fuel subsidy at the present estimated 2011 expenditure of close to 1.5 trillion naira, it will exceed the deficit cap of 3% imposed by the 2007 Fiscal Responsibility Act. Government have in the twilight of 2011 and within the first few weeks of 2012 made a public plan of action with numerous capital projects under the umbrella of Subsidy Reinvestment and Empowerment Program SURE. Government has appointed Dr. Christopher Kolade as chairman to oversee the board of the committee responsible for the implementation of SURE. Also on the SURE board is retired Major General Mamman Kontagora, who will serve as deputy chairman. These several capital projects running into hundreds of billions of naira are not provided for in the 2012 budget. They can only be financed via new sources of revenue, which can only be possible if the budgeted 2012 oil price benchmark of $70 per barrel rises considerably, or the naira is drastically devalued, or the naira-dollar exchange rate is allowed to slide further so as to raise more naira for the government to spend. This latter prospect will still be circumspect, as many of the component projects of the SURE program, such as road construction projects of more than 1,326 kilometers, large, medium and small-scale hydropower projects, long-distance rail projects totaling about 3,877 kilometers, as well as 3 new refineries, are most likely to be paid for in foreign exchange and will hardly be affected by a devaluation of the naira or a drastic slide in the naira to dollar exchange regime. As a matter of fact, government will have to propose new appropriation in supplementary budget. This, of course, is the easy part.
Which way Nigeria? Which way Nigeria? Which way?
They should cut down on their lifestyle, cut down on their convoy, cut down on their domestic and official aids, cut down on their girlfriend's allowance.
The year before, under Obasanjo, with all his profligacy, he spent only 200 billion. So why did we spend 1.4 trillion 2011? It's because it was used to finance elections.
Which way Nigeria is heading to? Many years after independence, we still find it hard to start. How long shall we be patient?
Many have accused the federal government of promoting wastage of the nation's resources while asking the ordinary Nigerian to bear the added burden of a colossal 125% increase on the pump price of petrol, or PMS, petrol motor spirit. They easily cite projected expenditures as contained in the 2012 budget proposal submitted by the President. This budget currently awaits the approval of the National Assembly. Reviews of the deluge of alleged wasteful appropriations include, but are not limited to, the following: projected expenditure of 4.5 billion naira for stationery, magazines and newspapers in 21 out of the 50 ministries, departments and agencies, 17 billion naira for maintenance of vehicles, furniture, etc., 27 billion naira for research and development, and all these sums are only for 21 out of the 50 ministries, departments and agencies. A broader calculation amounts to a whooping sum of 160 billion naira for what critics consider non-essential needs: refreshments, meals, training. This equals the amount budget for the entire power sector. Curiously, the Foreign Affairs Ministry budgeted to spend 322 million naira to purchase computer software. much ado has visited the State House Presidential Villa budget. 7.2 billion naira is budgeted for overheads. This equates 600 million a month, or 20 million naira per day. The President and Vice President are allocated 724 million, or 2 million naira per day for traveling locally within Nigeria, and 951 million naira, or 3 million naira per day for foreign travels. That is assuming that both Mr. President and the Vice President will travel locally or abroad every day. In the same State House budget, critics also query the curious allocation of 285 million naira earmarked as welfare packages, 295 million for new furniture, and a further 1.8 billion naira to maintain existing furniture, office and residential quarters. The Office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation wants to spend 65 million naira to plant trees, while 150 million naira is budgeted to provide public address system in the offices of both the President and Vice President, as well as the banquet hall. Also of curious interest is the great fiscal disparity between the sums purportedly paid as subsidy from 2007 to 2010 as against that of just the first 3 quarters of 2011, that is between January and September 2011. While a total of approximately 1.6 trillion naira was paid as subsidy from 2007 to June 2010. 1.3 trillion naira was purportedly paid as subsidy between January and September 2011 alone. What must have occasioned this astronomical and exponential rise in the subsidy payment just for 9 months? On the average, this will equate 1.56 trillion naira for 2011 alone, or a mere 40 billion naira less than the combined total of 2007, 2008, 2009 till June 2010. In lay terms, the government claims to have paid out in the first 9 months of 2011 almost what it paid as subsidy for 42 months from January 2007 to June 2010. Going further back, NNPC, in its published 2002 operations report, claimed that 192.56 billion naira was total cost of imported petroleum products. It claimed to have realized 123.75 billion naira from sales to the public, while 68.81 billion naira was its shortfall or subsidy. Today, that has increased by more than 1 trillion naira in just 9 years. Many state governors are either in open or tacit silent support for the removal of subsidy. This can be traced to statistics made public by Shaw. By supporting subsidy, the federal government will get an additional 478.49 billion naira. All local governments will share a combined total of 201 billion naira, while the various state governments will share a combined total of 411 billion naira, with states getting between 5.88 billion naira to 44.6 billion naira. Such states as River State, 44.6 billion naira, Akwa Ibom State, 43.4 billion naira, Delta State, 40.9 billion naira, Bayelsa State, 33.8 billion naira, Ondo State, 12.55 billion naira, Kano State, 11.2 billion naira, Lagos State, 10.12 billion naira, and Edo State, 9.43 billion naira. States such as Zamfara, 6.97 billion naira, Osun, 6.57 billion naira, Ekiti, 5.93 billion naira, and Ebonyi, 5.88 billion naira bring up the rear. Subsidy removal on paper appears a huge cash windfall for all state governments, though to varied degrees. A lot of the civil society groups and social media accuse government of a brazen unwillingness to accede to the will of the people, its sovereign. To them, government's continued stand on the unpopular subsidy removal only appears to invite and legitimize the continued revolt of the masses against the policy.
Which way to go? I love my fatherland. Oh yeah. I want to know. Yes, I want to know.